seated. I ask your undivided attention as we listen to a safety briefing.
Welcome to the Pamella Benson Audiovisual Room at the National Library of Trinidad and Tobago. This is a safety briefing. In the event of an emergency, or at the sound of the alarm, kindly remain calm and proceed in an orderly fashion to the exits. There are 3 exits. 2 are located at the back of the room, 1 on the right and 1 on the left. The 3rd exit is located at the front of the room, at your left. Take a moment to locate the exit closest to you. Once out of the room, kindly proceed up the stairs out of the building to our muster point as directed by authorized personnel. Please note, you are not allowed to re-enter the building unless given clearance to do so by security personnel. We wish to also inform you that eating, drinking, or the chewing of gum is strictly prohibited in this space. Please take a moment to put your mobile phones on silent. We thank you in advance for your cooperation.
Professor Emeritus Kenneth Ramchand, Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Stanley Griffin, Head of Department, Department of Library and Information Studies, University of the West Indies, Mona Campus, Mrs. Avalon Thomas, Director, Human Resources Management Division, National Library and Information System Authority, NALIS, Ms. Charmaine Glasgow, Director, Educational Library Services Division, NALIS, Dr. Charmaine Rennick, Acting Campus Librarian, UE St. Augustine Campus, Ms. Jennifer Joseph, Retired University and Campus Librarian, UE St. Augustine Campus, Mr. John Aarons, Retired UE Archivist and former Adjunct Lecturer in the DLIS, Mrs. Elsie Aarons, former Adjunct Lecturer in the DLIS, Ms. Joanne Georges, Retired Campus Records Manager, UE St. Augustine Campus, esteemed current and retired executives from the Library and Archival Management profession, executive board members of the Library Association of Trinidad and Tobago, Mrs. Peter Gay Richards, Mrs. Nicole Allen, adjunct lecturers in the DLIS, 2025 graduates of the Department of Library and Information Studies, current students of the Department of Library and Information Studies, specially invited guests, good evening to you all. It is both a privilege and a pleasure to bring greetings on behalf of the Library Association of Trinidad and Tobago at this momentous celebration of information excellence. This event stands as a powerful affirmation of the strength that emerges when institutions unite in purpose and vision. The collaboration between the Department of Library and Information Studies of the University of the West Indies Mona Campus and the Library Association of Trinidad and Tobago reflects a shared commitment to the advancement of library and information services, not only within our respective territories, but across the Caribbean region as a whole. As LAT's president, I am especially heartened to witness this renewed spirit of regional cooperation, a spirit that finds meaningful expression in the launch of the Trinidad Strategy, which signals an exciting new phase of academic and professional engagement. This initiative underscores the importance of cultivating robust partnerships, building capacity, and nurturing the next generation of information professionals who will carry forward the torch of professional exceptionalism in our respective fields. This evening's program affords us the opportunity to celebrate excellence in many forms, the accomplishments of our graduates, the recognition of outstanding academic performance, and the sharing of wisdom and insight through the distinguished scholarship of Professor Ramchand, who continues to illuminate and strengthen our Caribbean intellectual heritage. To the graduates, I extend my warmest congratulations. Your success stands as a testament to your perseverance, your intellectual curiosity, and your deep commitment to the profession. You join a proud lineage of Caribbean information professionals who continue to transform the ways in which knowledge is preserved, accessed, and shared. To the National Library and Information System Authority, NALIS, your organization continues to demonstrate unwavering support for the programs, activities, and initiatives of the Library Association. This steadfast partnership has greatly strengthened our efforts to advance professional development, promote access to information, and uphold the highest standards of service within the library and information community. And this evening's celebration would not have been possible without your gracious support. To Dr. Griffin and your team, I extend a sincere appreciation for your steadfast support of the profession and for your ongoing collaboration with LAT. Through your efforts, you continue to strengthen the foundation upon which our libraries and information services are built. As we celebrate this evening, let us also renew our shared commitment to sustaining the highest standards of professional excellence, to embracing innovation, and to ensuring that our libraries and information institutions remain dynamic, inclusive, and indispensable to national and regional development. Once again, on behalf of the Library Association of Trinidad and Tobago, I extend congratulations to all graduates, and I express deep gratitude to you all, our honored guests, for sharing this landmark occasion with us. May this celebration of information excellence inspire continued partnership, purpose, and pride in the noble profession we all serve. Thank you. I now welcome on stage Mrs. Avalon Thomas, Director, Human Resources Management Division, NALIS, who would be offering some greetings on behalf of the Executive Director.
Professor Kenneth Ramchan, Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Stanley Griffin, Head of Department of Library and Information Studies, University of the West Indies, Mona Campus, Ms. Charmaine Glasgow, Director, Educational Library Services Division, NALIS, Dr. Charmaine Renwick, Acting Campus Librarian, UWI St. Augustine, Ms. Jennifer Joseph, Retired University Campus Librarian, UWI St. Augustine, Mr. John Aaron, Retired UWI Archivist and former Adjunct Lecturer in the DLIS, Mrs. Elsie Aaron, former Adjunct Lecturer, Ms. Rebecca Fortune Singh, Campus Records Manager, UWI St. Augustine Campus, Ms. Joanne Georges, Retired Campus Records Manager, UWI St. Augustine Campus, Dr. Lauren Nero, Head of West Indiana Special Collection, Almut Jordan Library, esteemed current and retired executive from the Library and Archive Management profession, the executive board members of the Library Association of Trinidad and Tobago, Mrs. Peter Richards, Mrs. Nicole Allen, and Ms. Sparkle Fiera, adjunct lecturers, Mr. Kevin Nazir, Marketing and Sales Manager, School and Office Supplies Limited, 2025 graduates of the Department of Library and Information Studies, current students of the Department of Library and Information Studies, specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. A pleasant good evening to all. I bring greetings and sincere apologies from the Executive Director, NALIS, Ms. Paula Green, who unfortunately could not be here today due to a prior commitment. Ms. Green has asked me to convey her best wishes and appreciation to everyone present. On behalf of the Executive Director, NALIS, and the entire leadership of the National Library and Information System Authority, it is both an honor and privilege to bring greetings at this important and timely event, the celebration of information excellence and the official launch of the Trinidad Strategy. Today marks more than just a ceremony. It marks a milestone in the journey of professional development and regional collaboration. We at NALIS are especially proud to note that some employees of NALIS form part of the graduating cohorts being celebrated here today. Dedicated Trinbagodians who have pursued academic and professional advancement in the service of their country and region. We salute your dedication, resilience, and excellence. NALIS remains deeply committed to the advancement of information excellence across Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean. For us, this is not simply about institutional success, it is about national development. It is about investing in our people, nurturing talent, and strengthening the system that safeguards our collective memory and power our knowledge economy. From a human resource development perspective, this collaboration with the Department of Library and Information Studies is a shining example of how strategic partnership can elevate professional standards, foster continuous learning, and prepare our workforce for the evolving demands of the information age. We recognize that our greatest assets are not just our collections or our buildings, but they are our people. Therefore, the investment in their training, education, and development is an investment in the future of our nation. The Trinidad strategy, as launched today, is a bold and welcome initiative. It represents a deliberate and thoughtful deepening of regional engagement, and we at NALIS are proud to be associated with this effort. We share in the vision of Caribbean that is informed, empowered, and connected through the work of skilled information professionals, record managers, and educators who are equipped not only with knowledge, but with purpose. We commend the Department of Library and Information Studies at the University of the West Indies, Mona, for its leadership in this regard. Over the years, your unwavering support and collaboration have helped transform the landscape of information services throughout the region. Your role in developing the next generation of leaders in this field cannot be overstated. As we celebrate the achievements of these graduates, and as we reflect on the legacy, the vision of this partnership, NALIS renews its commitment to working hand in hand with all stakeholders, academic, governmental, and professional, to advance excellence in library and information services. Together, we are shaping a more informed, innovative, and inclusive Caribbean. Let me close by expressing heartfelt congratulations to the graduates and gratitude to the faculty, supporters, and partners who have made today possible. On behalf of the Executive Director, NALIS, and the entire NALIS family, thank you, and NALIS looks forward to the continued success of this important collaboration. I thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. I now invite Dr. Stanley Griffin, Head of Department, Library and Information Studies, UWI Mona, who will give a statement of purpose and recognition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish to stand on the protocol established by you and recognize Professor Kenneth Ramchand, the various executive leadership, members of the academic community, and past former leadership, the shoulders on which we stand, who are with us this afternoon. As well, this is an academic affair, so my students and my class and the people all around the region who are joining us this afternoon. So good evening and welcome to this timely, much-needed occasion. I am honored and filled with pride to greet you at this, our celebration of information excellence, where we gather not only to honor achievement, but to affirm purpose, direction, and legacy. Tonight, we celebrate the outstanding accomplishments of 13 master's graduates crossing the stage at the St. Augustine campus, and 20-something totally out of the department that 2 crossed the stage at Cave Hill. The balance will be crossing the stage next week, if Melissa allows, in the Mona campus, Jamaica. Melissa, behave yourself. So these master's graduates, whose dedication and perseverance exemplify the highest standard of our Caribbean academic tradition. We are also proud of the 11 student awardees whose distinction reflects the promise and potential of our information disciplines. These individuals represent more than personal success. They are the embodiment of our department's continuing contribution to the advancement of knowledge, service, and leadership in information studies and practice. Tonight's event holds a special significance for us as a department, as it is the launch pad of our Trinidad strategy, starting with the Trinidad and Tobago jurisdiction. Our renewed commitment to re-energizing the presence and impact of the Department of Library and Information Studies in Trinidad and Tobago and the Eastern Caribbean. We are strategically strengthening our support to students, lecturers. There's a reason why we have adjunct lecturers in Trinidad and Tobago. It's not just adjunct lecturers that will be resident in one jurisdiction over the other. There's a reason for the madness. We are strategically strengthening our support to students, lecturers, and stakeholders across the region, acknowledging that the regional engagement is not peripheral to our mission, it is central. We are the only department at the Mona campus, outside of the Faculty of Sport, that has this regional remit. We are the only Department of Library and Information Studies within the UWI family of campuses. Let me make this clear. We are not a Jamaican entity, but we are a regional academic department based at the Mona campus in Jamaica. Each territory, each student, each jurisdiction, each information culture has a valid and vested place in the Department of Library and Information Studies. So therefore, as a department, we are in a moment of purposeful transition. We are evolving our curricula in librarianship and information studies to respond to the dynamic landscape of information theory and practice. At the same time, we are rebuilding a bold undergraduate program that will be renamed in Digital Information Studies that will equip our future researchers and professionals with the vision for new competencies demanded by a rapidly changing Caribbean and world. And yet, in the midst of all this necessary change, we must return to the roots that have sustained us. For when change is imminent, the legacy of excellence becomes even more essential. It is this legacy, shaped by decades of distinctive service, scholarship, and innovation, as seen by the names and faces who are with us tonight, that will carry us forward as a department and as disciplines. It ensures that our transformation is not only strategic, but also meaningful and sustainable. That is why tonight's gathering of the DLIS in Port of Spain, Trinidad, is more than a ceremony. It is a reflection of who we are and are supposed to be as an academic community. We are an academic community. It's for that reason we gather primarily for a lecture. If we were a training community, we would gather for a workshop. We are an academic department in a university. Librarianship forms part of information studies, and it is grounded in academic thought, theory, and praxis. It's not a trade school business. We gather for a lecture because we are an academic community. This lecture room and the lectern have always been our shared space, a place where we come to learn, to question, to reflect, and importantly, as academic people, we come to the lecture to celebrate. That's why I said to Prof, take your time. You are the lecture. You are the reason for us to celebrate. We are an academic community, and the lecture shapes our celebration. This evening's distinguished lecture is not merely an additional to the program. It is an affirmation of our academic tradition in information studies, our intellectual heritage, and our continuing relevance to the academy. And out of this academy, out of this lecture, comes practice. The theory shapes who we are and what we do and how we do it, not the other way around. And so as we prepare to hear from Professor Ken Ramchand, I encourage each of you to consider what this celebration represents: a tribute to excellence, a commitment to transformation, and a reaffirmation of the critical role of information and knowledge in shaping just and resilient societies. As our own new departmental logo's tagline states, inspiration leads to innovation, which leads to information. And we information people, we are about encouraging creativity, encouraging that inspiration, encouraging that innovation. And by managing information, we help to preserve inspiration and innovation. That's why, as part of your start of a project, you must consult your library. True? Yeah, that's why we are central to the academic thought process. We inspire, we help you innovate, and then we preserve the information that has been created. So now it is with great pleasure that I will invite you to turn your attention to the heart of tonight's academic celebration, the distinguished lecture. This will be our second opportunity as a department to gather under the theme or the discipline of archives and records, as our department has at least 3 or 4 distinguished lecture series. Firstly, the first one is dedicated to the now memory of the late Professor Daphne Douglas, who was our pioneering Caribbean librarian, who literally set up who we are and what we do. And the second one is dedicated, and I keep forgetting his name. I will say Michael Gill, but it's not Michael Gill. Michael Gill is from Barbados. The bibliographer. Kenneth Ingram. Ken Ingram. I always mix him up. Ken Ingram was a special man. He did his life's work searching for Caribbean materials, not just region-wide, but all libraries and archives around the world. And so in our academic tradition, we celebrate his memory in a lecture form. The department started teaching archives in 2015, and as part of that tradition in 2019, we launched our own distinctive lecture series in archives and records. The first being by Professor Donna Hope, looking at dance hall. And I know the Trinidadians love to listen to dance hall. I've heard more of it here than there. And Professor Donna Hope spoke about the dance hall archives. At that time, people were, how you could have dance hall and archive in one sentence. And so we look forward tonight to the meaning of the text, the short life of a text and its reincarnations. Again, thinking through the process of creativity, inspiration, and information. And it's always good to see Sparkle Ferreira in the room. So this will be our second opportunity to focus on archives and records as a distinction and through the lens of an eminent professor of West Indian literature. We hope this lecture will continue to promote insight and scholarship into what we do, focusing on the information disciplines. So please celebrate the moment, pay attention to the lecture, and then as a community, let's remember that we are one department on several campuses, one department across the region. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Griffin. So I would now like to invite on stage Ms. Sparkle Ferreira, adjunct lecturer and PhD candidate, who will present an introduction of our distinguished lecturer. Please welcome her.
Good afternoon, everyone. Professor Kenneth Ramchand is Professor Emeritus of West Indian Literature at the University of the West Indies. He is the author of the pioneering 1970 work, The West Indian Novel and Its Background, along with several other books, and edited editions of lost or neglected West Indian novels. A selection of his literary essays spanning over 30 years is set to be published in 2 volumes as selected essays in 2026. Professor Ramchand also served for 12 years as an independent senator in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. For over a decade, his weekly column, Matters Arising, appeared in the Trinidad and Tobago Guardian, earning him the reputation of journalist of the professor class. In September 2025, Professor Ramchand was awarded this country's highest honor, the Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Therefore, it is my distinct honor and privilege to welcome to the podium Professor Emeritus Kenneth Ramchand, ORTT.
Thank you very much. I was going to make a bad joke and say that was sparkling. Gracious hosts, faculty and other staff, distinguished guests, and graduating students. I take it as an honor and an act of trust to have been asked to speak on anything I want to at this celebration of information excellence. But after listening to the head of department, I'm a little bit frightened, because I think he knows what he wants me to talk about. This is essentially a conversation about the fate of one of the most important written texts in the history of our region. It is the best text I know for exploring the varied and sometimes dodgy practices of textual scholarship, its methods, its purposes, and for seeing, as only we like to see and look for, and for seeing its possible social, cultural, political impacts. The text I'm talking about is the first written account of Europe's meeting with the other in what to them was a new world. It is the originary text in what has always been a self-centered and self-justifying European discourse about their encounter with people who their discourse calls subject peoples. The text I'm talking about was written in the late 15th century. I want to give it a more philosophical and moral context than it has been accorded by Euro-American scholars at any time in the last 500 years. And as we shall see, the reasons for the scaling down of moral, philosophical, and religious considerations with respect to this particular text, these reasons amount to a conspiracy against meaning, a conspiracy in which textual scholarship has been complicit. I have titled the prelude, Genocide and the Disappearing of Peoples. in this prelude, I'm going to look at two passages that raise the subject of the disappearance of First Peoples. And a third passage, disappearance again, but this time not Tainos and Caribs, but Indians in Trinidad. And this whole movement leads me to the topic of racial insecurity. So in the foreword to The Loss of El Dorado, Naipaul reports his scholarly discovery about the small country town of Chaguanas, where he was born. In his research for The Loss of El Dorado, he discovered a letter of October 12, 1625, sent to the governor of Trinidad by the King of Spain. The king was replying to the governor's report on a certain nation of Indians called Chaguanes, who were of a bad disposition and who acknowledged no master save their own will. The Chaguanes, it seems, had been sleeping with the enemy. They had collaborated with the English, and the Spanish king was concurring with the governor's decision to punish them for their crime. What action the governor took, what protection the English collaborators offered, and how the nation of Chaguanes handled it themselves is obscure. Naipaul offers it as a finding of his research that the Chaguanes are not mentioned in any other known documents. The author's naturally gloomy perspective seems to enjoy telling us that the Chaguanes disappear in silence, and that soon, in the place called Chaguanas, no one would know that there was once a people called Chaguanes. It is not only the disappearance of the Chaguanes that concerned Naipaul. In the same novel, he allows his narrating character, Ralph Singh, to talk about a drive through Carib country. We drove through Carib areas where the people were more Negro than Carib. Ex-slaves fleeing the plantations had settled here and intermarried with the very people who in the days of slavery had been their great tormentors, expert trackers of forest runaways, but now, by this intermarriage, had become their depressed serfs. The Caribs had been absorbed and had simply ceased to be. It was like being in an area of legend. The scale was small in time, numbers, and areas. And here, just for a moment, the rise and fall of peoples, a concept so big and alarming, was concrete and close. This characteristic Napoleon feeling about the rise and fall and extension of peoples is at the center of the Mimic Men. And in this novel, the anxiety envelops another kind of Indian in a later period. Ralph Singh is a descendant of indentured workers brought from India to the West Indies in the post-emancipation period, and he is alarmed about the fate of people like himself. I belonged to a small community which in this part of the world was doomed. We were an intermediate race, the genes passive, capable of disappearing in 2 generations into any one of the 3 races of men, with perhaps only a shape of eye or flexibility of slender wrist to speak of our intrusion. Singh's words are an expression of racial insecurity. Racial insecurity in our region began with the arrival of Christopher Columbus in 1492, and it has continued and spread up to the present time. Columbus was the progenitor of the killing practices of forced labor, the encomienda, slavery and slave trading, racism and genocide. We can see these in operation, and we can see the seeds of other cruelties, including the abuse of women, in books like The Log of Christopher Columbus, 1987, translated from the Spanish and edited by Robert H. Fusion. But I'm going to tell you, there's no such thing as the Log of Christopher Columbus. But there are many books I've read that have that title, The Log of Christopher Columbus. There is no log. We come to that. All the same, it's an interesting book. Our next section is called Possession and Dispossession. We begin with the discoverer's entry into our waters. One of the first things he did was to take possession of the island of Guanahani. I wasn't planning to do this, but I'm going to do it. I feel I should read just one paragraph describing the way in which Columbus took possession of Guanahani. It's on page 75 of the book I've just referred to as The Log of Christopher Columbus. At dawn, we saw naked people, and I went ashore in the ship's boat, armed, followed by Martin Alonso Pinzon, captain of the Pinta, and his brother Vicente Yanes Pinzon, captain of the Nina. I unfurled the royal banner, and the captains brought the flags, which displayed a large green cross with the letters F, Ferdinand, and Y, Isabella, at the left and right side of the cross. Over each letter was the appropriate crown of that sovereign. These flags were carried as a standard on all of the ships. After a prayer of thanksgiving, I ordered the captains of the Pinta and Nina, together with Rodrigo de Escobedo, secretary of the fleet, and Rodrigo Sanchez, controller of the fleet, to bear faith and witness that I was taking possession of this island for the king and queen. I made all the necessary dedications and had these testimonies carefully written down by the secretary. In addition to those named above, the entire company of the fleet bore witness to this act. At another point when he refers to this, he does it He thinks a poetic thing. I did this and nobody objected. I did this and nobody objected. I did this and nobody objected. But nobody objected. To this island, I gave the name San Salvador in honor of our blessed Lord. Columbus declares cavalierly a little later that once you've formally taken possession of one island, you could go ahead and take the others just so. When you read what we're calling the log for the time being, when you read the log, certain things stand out. Columbus's blending of conquest and conversion, his missionary ritual of ignoring local names and christening the places he came upon with names that have Christian and royal associations. And then we have his early professions about the innocence of these people in a state of nature, and not long afterwards, the revelation of his true colors in his dealings with the Tainos. His acquiescence in the idea of the natural superiority of his people and the inferiority of those who stood by and let themselves be conquered. And his, at one and the same time, his response to the wonder of this environment and the promise of economic value of this new Eden granted to him by divine providence. He is not surprised that the Tainos are simple people who do not have a proper language and who are without religion, culture, or clothes. You could almost hear him thinking, they were just waiting for someone to come down from the sky and give them an identity. He notices things they have grown and produced and exchanged with one another. He marvels at their boat-making technology, but he has no interest in getting to know them. He does not see them as people at all, and he does not see them as people with an organized economy and their own patterns of trade. He cannot conceive of them as belonging to a landscape, shaping it, and being shaped by it. That's very important about the European discourse. They're things they don't see. In writing about how Europe underdeveloped Africa, Walter Rodney goes into detail about the devastating effects of breaking the bond between people and place. From time to time, I will mention Rodney, because long before Europe realized that they were guilty of European discourse, Rodney's life and work were challenging their perspective on the other and the land of the other. Their weapons were made of wood and stone, but they were afraid of gunfire. They were timid and accommodating. They would make good servants. Spanish subjects by conversion and conquest, they could be shipped to Spain, used as servants, and sold as slaves. Columbus later proposed to the Queen that in return for livestock and other requirements of the Spanish settlers, the colonies could be the source of a steady supply of slaves to be sold in Europe. Columbus had no qualms about being a slave trader. The next section is called The Terrors He Had Sailed From. Columbus we see in the log is a tormented man with many hurts and many bitter experiences. George Lamming's ambitious novel, Natives of My Person, 1972, explores the chaotic consciousness of a white crew carrying the burden of their past, including their recent history of African slave trading. They are becalmed in the Black Atlantic on a vessel called Reconnaissance. I don't blame him. Lamming leaves them right there. None of the white characters can glimpse the possibility of liberation from the terrors of their own past in this meeting with the other and the other world. And then we have this wonderful episode in Kamau Brathwaite's Rites of Passage, the encounter between the Europe and the native Caribbean being endowed with a whisper of hopeful imagining. A surprised Columbus senses the possibility of a rebirth that promises him release from the terrors he had sailed from and from the yoke of his for-profit mission. Columbus from his afterdeck watched heights he hoped for, rocks he dreamed, rise solid from my simple water. Parrots screamed. Soon he would touch our land, his charted mind's desire. The blue sky blessed the morning with its fire. The bearded fig trees, the yellow peas that blazed like pollen, and the thin waterfalls suspended in the green were the tokens of annunciation. Now he was sure he heard soft voices mocking in the leaves. What did this journey mean? This new world mean? Discovery? Or a return to terrors he had sailed from, known before? I watched him pause. Then he was splashing silence. Crabs snapped their claws and scattered as he walked towards our shore. The poem passes, the moment passes. The poem's observing aborigine saw Columbus failing to recognize the perversion of his humanity that was taking place and choosing to proceed as a lost soul, a robot of the imperialist and missionary program. And that's how history went. He marched on, splashing silence. He called the group of islands the Indies, imposing upon them a collective identification. He erased the names of the individual islands and baptized them with names that had Christian and royal association. The natives were simple, gullible creatures with no language, no culture, no religion. Conquest would make them subjects of the queen. Conversion would give them entry to the heavenly kingdom. No need to come to terms with the others, with the otherness of the other. The other can become you. Columbus's log was the first fiction of the Caribbean and the inaugural address of European discourse. The life of a log. What's going to happen is when I reach a certain point I will stop because my conclusion is tentative anyway, right? The life of a log. Yes, Columbus lied. And for more than 5 centuries, Europe maintained, embellished, elaborated, and lived his lies. The document usually published as the log of Christopher Columbus is the first extended example of imperial colonial discourse concerning the places and the peoples in our region. It is the first ethnographic account of the Tainos, and it set the standard for the biased ethnography of our region from then to now. Early on the first voyage, Columbus wrote to his sponsors, the Queen and the King of Spain, that he's going to write down everything I might do and see and experience on this voyage from day to day, and very carefully. He would make a new chart for navigation in which he would set down all the sea and lands of the ocean sea. He would describe the beauty and the portable resources of the land. He was going to write a comprehensive and appetizing account for the monarchs. And it seems he did. So let's begin by granting the sea dog his dogginess. No one can deny the heroics of the enterprising and extravagating navigator. He faced unknown sky and sea and submarine hazards with aplomb. The Calypsonian was right to call him a mighty sailor, and the log is a brilliant hands-on treatise on the art and craft of seamanship, a trustworthy guide to negotiating Caribbean waters. So that's out of the way. It's not my subject. My emphasis is on the other side of the log, how it foreshadows what Las Casas calls the destruction of the Indies, and how it anticipates every item in the imperialist agenda and virtually sows the seeds of a problematic future of the Caribbean. I think by now you realize I'm attacking European discourse, right? I'm not going to get polemical. I'm just going to tell the truth as I see it. The heart of my story is the story of how only 2 copies of Columbus's log, the only 2 copies of Columbus's log disappeared, and how different branches of textual scholarship retrieved and reconstructed it. So textual scholarship is very implicated in the creation of the discourse. Well, scholarship is implicated in the creation of all discourse, but textual scholarship really came to the rescue here with the only 2 copies of the log disappearing, and all the branches of textual scholarship came together to retrieve and reconstruct it. And the scholars came from all over Europe, and in a sense, therefore, Europe contributed to and accepted the reconstruction, embellished it, and gave it new, monstrous forms of life over 500 years. My next section, which might be a difficult section, but I like it, is called "And Then There Were None." On his triumphant return to Spain in 1493, Columbus presented to Queen Isabella a day-by-day log, which is both a technical ship's log and a personal document similar to a personal diary or journal. The Queen was holding court in Barcelona at the time. She immediately commissioned a scribe to make a copy for Columbus, which came to be called the Barcelona copy. So you have the Queen's copy, the royal copy, and the Barcelona copy, which was delivered to the Admiral of the Ocean Sea just before he left on his second voyage on September 25th, 1493. The royal copy, belonging to the Queen, disappeared by the time of her death in 1504. But the Barcelona copy was going to make a disappearance also. When Columbus died in 1506, most of his books and papers passed to his eldest son, Diego Colon. Columbus was very shifty about his name. He really didn't like Colombo or Columbus, and later on he began to call himself Cristoforo Colon. So his eldest son is Diego. And when Columbus died, Diego inherited his father's books and papers, including the Barcelona copy. When Diego died in 1526, the lawful heir was his son Luis, who was then a minor under the guardianship of his mother, Maria Alvarez. Now, Columbus's other son, Fernando, the only civilized member of the Columbus family, was a scholar and a bibliophile who owned one of the finest collections of printed books and manuscripts in Europe. If you're starting to feel bored, just remember it's information. So yes, Fernando was by disposition an archivist, or is it archivist? Either. And probably was the trusted keeper of some of his brother Diego's inheritance. It is almost certain that for some time at least, Diego entrusted the Barcelona copy to his half-brother Fernando for safekeeping. Fernando had no children, and when he died in 1539, his nephew, the same Louis, was the nearest of kin and the logical inheritor of Fernando's library. Because there were others making claims, Fernando's library was sealed for 5 years. But in 1544, Louis's ownership seemed more or less confirmed, for Maria was allowed to remove the bulk of Fernando's papers to the Dominican monastery in Seville. As heir to his father and to his uncle, Louis was now owner of all the Columbus papers. He had unrestricted access to the material that was being held in trust at the monastery in Seville. That was a very bad thing. Louis was not a suitable boy. He loved women and money, but not books. He seems to have no pride in family. And in 1554, he went up there to the monastery and got the Barcelona copy, and he was poised to publish it. He never did so, because it looks as if a rich book collector offered him more and quicker cash than he could have got from going to the bother of publishing the book. So he sold it. It has never been seen since 1554. Both opening batsmen gone. So the question is, this did not trouble Louis. Years later, in 1570, he had no qualms about selling the manuscript of his uncle Fernando's biography of Columbus, which was written between 37 and 39. The account made use of his own memories of his father, oral testimonies, some from people who might have known Columbus personally, and the admiral's papers and letters, including the Barcelona copy of the log. Louis Colon sold his uncle's pious labor of love to an Italian publisher. The Italian publisher issued a poor translation of it in 1571. And now, we could not be sure how poor or how true to Fernando's Historia the Italian translation was or is, because at this point, Fernando's book, which was written in Spanish, sank out of sight. These fellas remind me of me, I losing things all the time, all over the place, books and papers and so on. They had a penchant for doing that. This loss of primary material was more grievous considering what had already happened. There had been 2 copies of the log in 1493, but in 1554 there were none. And the nearest thing to have some kind of content that you could say was contemporary, that too, the biography of Columbus, written by his son, that too was out of sight. So we were in very desperate waters. I'm going to do 2 more sections, unless somebody come and pull me off. The other day we had a session here, and a fellow exceeded his 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and I'm waving at him and cheering people and showing them and carrying all over it, and he wouldn't listen. I had to go up and grab him by his wrist and pull him away from the microphone. Yeah. So don't do me that, right? I'll come off. If you say come off, I will come off. I have 3 sections called the afterlife of a text. And the first of those 3 is called the Columbus letter. So this would be of great interest to information people. So the log had disappeared. The Columbus letter was taken by most people as if it was the log itself. And this is why that is so. On his return from the Indies, I catch my tail to order this, and really when I read it, I enjoy it to see how this thing is unfolding. On his return from the Indies, Columbus was blown off course by contrary winds and was delayed in Lisbon for 14 days, during which time he was interviewed by the King of Portugal, who seemed to show too much interest in the lands down there. So from Portugal, Columbus sent a letter to Luis de Santangel, clerk to the Spanish monarchs, and who he knew. Columbus knew that this powerful man would take the letter to the Queen without delay. The calculating Columbus had culled this letter from his log. But it had a different tone from the log. In what is referred to as the Columbus letter, the sweet-talking self-promoter was telegraphing the miraculous success of his economic and religious mission. He was telegraphing the formal establishment of their majesties' ownership of the lands. He enthuses about the riches Spain would reap from its overseas estate, the harvest of souls to come from converting the natives who had no religion of their own, and the benefits to be realized from transporting Spain's new subjects by the thousands to the mother country, where they would prove compliant servants and marketable slaves. A chosen few, I imagine, could even become our first mimic men. This letter was perfect advertising copy, and it ensured immediate and lavish sponsorship for Columbus's second voyage. 17 ships and nearly 2,000 people who said they wanted to settle in the New World. On the strength of the Columbus letter, the Spanish monarchs got the Spanish-born Pope Alexander VI to issue in 1493 a papal bull granting Spain the rights to claim and exploit the Caribbean and other parts of the New World as long as they were not inhabited by Christians. So the royal copy and the Barcelona copy were to some extent state documents. The logs detailed navigational, ethnographic, and geographic details were not intended for general circulation. So neither the royal copy nor the Barcelona copy was part of the media blitz, the first ever media blitz in the world that occurred in 1493. The logs on availability was more than compensated for by the triumphant tone and the extravagant promises of the Columbus letter. The letter was printed in Spanish in 1493 and went viral. It was immediately translated into Latin and went through 9 editions within a year. In 1493, it was circulating in Rome, Basel, Paris, and Florence. Columbus had copied the Santangel letter to the King of Portugal because he was suspicious of the king. It was scrutinized by the court. It led to a challenge, and the King of Portugal succeeded in getting Pope to make a little amendment and to give Portugal the rights to the land that became Brazil. You see all these people sharing out things that is not theirs. This was the first time in the history of the world that an item of news had been so instantly and widely disseminated. The text itself was read in elevated and interested circles, and the myths of the intrepid discoverer and those bountiful lands caught the popular imagination. The letter made Columbus the European Man of the Year. The news of the discovery of a rich and Edenic new world spread throughout Europe, eventually turning the Caribbean region into a zone of opportunity and European economic competition, making the Blue Caribbean a European lake accessible from the wide Atlantic. A lake into which the imperial nations poured. Calculating Columbus had culled a letter from a ship's log, and the letter was taken as if it was the logger. Who cared about the log again? We had this letter which gave us all the news in a way that we could swallow all our fantasies. Long after Columbus's year of glory and his death, and long after the other European powers broke Spain's dominance, carved up the region among themselves, and eventually made the Atlantic the Black Atlantic. And long after that, Columbus's Barcelona log stood in its grave. I will just summarize the next section because that's the last bit I'm doing. Intervention of a text. Afterlife of a text, the intervention of Las Casas. At this point, Las Casas enters the story and becomes a major actor in it. His so-called reconstruction of the Barcelona copy was not a construction or reconstruction. His sources, including his notes and comments on the Barcelona copy, which he had been lucky enough to read, letters written by Columbus, reports and accounts of voyages by other Spaniards, and the extensive notes on the Barcelona copy that he had made. Long word-for-word quotations, extensive paraphrases, summaries, and precise notes on actual events. So I know how Fernando was feeling because I'm sure all of us have had this experience. You go to a special library where they tell you you can't take notes. You can't bring pen or pencil. So you see something you want. So you sit down there and you memorize 20 lines. You go in the toilet where they have this shiny toilet paper. You whistle out your little pencil which you had concealed. You write down your 20 lines. Exact. You go back, you see something you want, but you don't really want the exact copy. So you woke up a little somewhere in your head. You go back. Well, the good thing nobody asks you if you have diarrhea. Because they not tell me you have to go in there and think. But so I could sympathize with the old Las Casas. Copying, summarizing, paraphrasing. So Las Casas had originally intended to use these notes in this massive history that he was writing. And in the end, he put all his stuff about Columbus and Columbus's journey in the first part of his Historia, 29 chapters. But Columbus was like me. He always tinkering. 1566 come and he died. And he still haven't signed off on the book. And his unpublished manuscript went to various libraries and were out of sight until they were found in 1790 by a man called Navarrete. Not there. Martin Fernandez de Nazareth, who was doing a collection of journeys made by great Spanish navigators. And he found the Historia, and he started reading it, and like most people, you don't go beyond the first few pages. He realized that this thing was good, and he decided to put it in his collection. Not the whole Historia, just the part relating to Columbus. But Navarrete started the nonsense. Everybody thought that this was wonderful, you know, Navarrete has published Las Casas' thing. But he said on there, he shortened the account. He abridged it. He edited out as much of Las Casas' commentary and criticisms and moral and religious strictures as he could. And the Navarrete edition, thus sanitized, ruled until the 1880s, until two other scholars say, you know, I find this thing suspicious, you know. You have the Escorial copy over there in the Royal Library of the Monastery in Escorial. Let us go and look at Navarrete's edition, page by page, and compare it with what Las Casas really wrote. And they found that Navarrete was a bugger. He really mutilated the text. And so, at last, Las Casas' work made a comeback. And in 1890, the whole of the Historia was published. And so, at last, we had Las Casas' book about the first journey. He was no copyist. He wasn't a clerk. He wasn't just a source. When you read that, you realize he was a collaborator with Columbus. He was joint author of this thing. And that became the basis of all future copies of a text that reminds us of the log. In fact, it's so good that some others call it the log, but it wasn't the log. And it is my view that Las Casas was the joint author of that document. Of course, having rescued Las Casas' work and brought material about the log to a place where everybody could read it, I'm going to stop, but just to tell you that what happened afterwards was a very shameful thing. That the scholars who were at that point caught up. Oh.
The lecture don't start.
Yeah, Columbus these scholars, for the rest of that century and right up to about 1920, you could divide them into two groups. Those who went out with handcuff Las Casas, to sideline him, to edit him out of the text, to write introductions that vilify him and say he was a polemicist, he was an extremist, he was a liar, he was making things up. So you denigrate Las Casas because You want to elevate Columbus. And another bunch of scholars went through the thing showing what a great scholar, what a great navigator Columbus was, what a great patriot, what a great man. They tried to rouse sympathy. They tried to rouse sympathy for him because Columbus really catches his tail at the end. That he was neglected, he was abused, he was poor, he was sick. It's only Fernando who really showed him any kind of affection at the end. So the scholarship then, since the text was now established and they can't interfere with it, all they could do was interfere with the reputation of Columbus and the reputation of Las Casas and see whether they could discredit as much as they can. It's not as terrible as that. And some of them are good. For instance, the scholars who said, I don't like this thing. I think we have to compare it to the Escorial. There were one or two who were conscientious scholars. But after that text was established, you had that double thing about it. And don't talk about what happened in the middle of the 20th century and in the 21st. I would describe that period as the return of European discourse. Because they come up with a whole set of theoretical nonsense about what is below the text, and let me deconstruct the text. And they're more interested in their deconstructive activities than in what the text was saying, and what the text was saying to them about the kind of people they were and what they had done. So they moved away from the subject matter to go into abstruse scholarship. Like if all of them was Jameson or somebody like that. Yeah. I don't like to leave you all.
Folks, what a lecture. Thank you, Professor Ken. Starts off with the premise of racial insecurity, shaped by the falseness of the text, the lack of value in the text, the disappearance of the text, the misinterpretation of the text, and the review, revival, misreputationalizing of the text, and still the racial insecurity embedded in the text still haunts us to this day. What a reminder that while we provide access to the text, we need to ensure our users appreciate the content of the text, the purposes of the text, and not necessarily be caught in trying to validate the reputation of the writers of the text. Thank you, Professor Ken Ramchan. And I will ask Elizabeth, I always mispronounce your name, but she's one of our graduates from the NALIS, to make a presentation to Professor Ken Ramchan. Please, sir. Oh, I need to move. You might want to come center. Are you good, sir? And that's on behalf of the Library Association of Trinidad and Tobago, the DLIS. Thank you so very much, Professor Ken Ramchan. We're now moving into the Student Award ceremony. We have celebrated with a lecture. It's now to recognize success and achievement. And I invite my colleagues, Miss Peter Gay, Miss Peter Gay Richards and Miss Nicole Alade to lead us in this section.
Good afternoon. So I will be introducing Ms. Joanne Georges, who is going to present the ARCM Awards. When the teaching of archives and records management began in 2015, Ms. Joanne Georges was the unofficial tutor, mentor, and internship coordinator for archive students resident in Trinidad. Ms. Georges offered feedback to the program coordinator on matters of curriculum content, internship assessment, and local issues. Ms. Georges has been a constant friend of the ARCM program and its students, and it is in grateful recognition of her support and service to the DLIS that we now invite Ms. Joanne Georges to present the following awards to students in the Masters of Arts in Archives and Records Management. The Carmichael Award for Best Grade in ARCM 6001, Fundamentals of Archives and Records, Gian Julian. The Carmichael Award for Best Grade in ARCM 6002, Acquisition, Organization, and Use of Archival Materials, Rachel Ann Spring. The Carmichael Award for Best Grade in ARCM 6005, Practicum in Archives and Records Management, Ms. Rachel Ann Spring. The Dorothy Collins Distinguished Postgraduate Award for top graduating student in the Archives and Records Management Program, Ms. Roxanne Ross.
Thank you, Ms. George. Mrs. George. Up next, we are pleased to recognize the support of the Alma Jordan Library of the UWI St. Augustine campus for their support of our DLI students in various ways, including internship supervision, access to much-needed library resources, and support in the various ways librarians of the campus serve as mentors to students of the DLIS. In grateful recognition, we invite Dr. Shaman Renwick, I hope I pronounced that correctly, acting campus librarian, to present the following awards to the students in the Master of Library and Information Studies. Thank you. The Pippa Frey Award for Best Grade in LIBS 6001, Foundations of Library and Information Studies, Judy Lee. man, stop it, man. You will come after me. You want me to pause after this? Okay. The Dorothy Collins Award for Excellence in Lib 6201, Cataloging and Metadata, Devikar Mandoli. Devikar is not with us this afternoon. She's traveling, but just wanted to record. Yes. The Keita Rowe Critical Essay Distinction Award for Lib 6902, Independent Study, Natasha Daniel. The Dorothy Collins Award for Best Grade in Lib 6901, Trends and Issues in Library and Information Work, Amy Beijman. The Daphne Douglas Award for Excellence in Bibliography and Reference Methods and Materials, April Beheri. The Pippa Frey Award for Best Grade in Legal Information Resource Management, Devikar Mandoli. The Keita Rowe Award for Best Grade in Copyright Issues Affecting Caribbean Libraries and Information Services, Amy Beijman. Thank you, Dr. Renwick. Much appreciated. We will now pause for a video message from our Dean.
Everyone, it is both an honor. Good evening, everyone. It is both.
Had a little technical difficulties.
Well, let me just introduce why I have to ensure that this video is played. This ceremony is the Dean's ceremony, all right? And so it was by her permission that we were able to meet for this aspect of the activity this afternoon. So if I need to keep my job, right, I need to ensure. The Dean, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It is both an honor and a deep pleasure to bring greetings and congratulations on behalf of the Faculty of Humanities and Education at the University of the West Indies, Mona Campus, Jamaica. Today, we celebrate a remarkable group of graduates and student awardees from Trinidad, proud graduates of the Master of Library and Information Studies and the Masters of Arts in Archives and Records Management in our UWI's class of 2025. We are also here to recognize those of you receiving well-deserved student awards for outstanding performance and contribution. To each of you, I extend my heartfelt congratulations. Your journey to this moment has not been an easy one. It required persistence, sacrifice, and above all, resilience, especially as you pursued your studies online. balancing life, work, and the many challenges that come from distance learning. Your presence in this faculty, though virtual, has been real and meaningful. You have demonstrated the kind of determination and excellence that embodies the best of what our university stands for. Thank you for choosing to be part of the Mona Faculty of Humanities and Education. Your success is our pride, and we are honored to have played a role in your academic and professional journey. As you move forward, I encourage you to take the knowledge and values you have gained and use them to shape the future of information management and cultural preservation across the Caribbean and beyond. Your expertise is vital and your leadership is needed. Your contribution will matter to the development of this field. Congratulations once again. Enjoy this well-deserved celebration. You deserve every moment of it. Thank you.
If I may, Dr. Griffin, we have been hearing persons refer to our graduates, but we have only seen the students who were receiving awards this afternoon. I'm gonna ask our graduates in the audience to just come to the front so we can congratulate you appropriately. Tomorrow is your day, but today is also your day. So give them a big round of applause. Yes, and take a quick shot with Dr. Griffin. Proud graduates of the Department of Library and Information Studies. Thank you very much. Dr. Griffin, over to you. Head of Department Award for Academic Excellence for the year 2024-2025 in the Masters of Arts in Archives and Records Management, John Julian. Head of Department Award for Academic Excellence for the year 2024-2025 in the Masters in Library and Information Studies, April Behere.
Thank you. I have two more awards to present, but these are two institutions. The HOD don't give out these kinds of awards regularly, So I take the HOD privilege to issue these two. I wish to call Ms. Avalon Thomas, representing the Executive Director of the of NALIS. I'm out of jurisdiction, I can't remember that name, to collect on our behalf a token of our appreciation for the support and advocacy this institution has given to the department. Don't wait, we have to take a photograph. When the change, when I assumed the office, what was very clear on the file was NALIS encouraging the department to step into the future. Very clear. And while other jurisdictions may seem comfortable, NALIS as an institution said, expect more from you. And so this afternoon, as the vote of thanks will say, is part of NALIS's contribution to encouraging, if not kicking, the department into the future. On behalf of the department, thank you. I also wish to thank and call Madam President of the Library Association of Trinidad and Tobago for, again, their advocacy and support of the department. I'll tell you two ways. One, right now the student population of the DLIS is in and from Trinidad. When the registration process was happening and there was a trend in not admitting yourself properly, I called, I think I called you first or Dr. Williams, and I said, look here, talk to your people and them. They need to apply properly. And before the day, there was a flyer sent out, clearly outlining the issues with your applications and how to rectify them. Tonight's event, the fact that my colleagues and I are here is built on the trust between the department and the Library Association. And I'm not talking fancy trust. I'm talking the old-time shopkeeper trust. Know what I mean? Trust me. Half a chicken, quarter pound of cheese, you know what I mean? That is that depth of trust and investment and support for the department. As I said to the president, like we say to the shopkeeper, mountain soon reach. It is coming, but we're hungry now. So trust me. And so we are grateful, and I wish to use this opportunity to recognize the president and the executive director of NALIS. This jurisdiction is one of our more active and vibrant library jurisdictions. Your support and connection with the department is vital. If you look at the statistics, if ever Trinidad and Tobago primarily walk out of DLIS, we are in trouble. And so I therefore make no apologies. I ain't ashamed to say, we need a stronger presence here because you have a strong presence in the department. And so we will be working together to materialize this presence. We don't know how long the trust will last, right? Because we do, meet our needs and obligations. But, those of you who come from UWI, we're kind of slow, but we have a trust. And we really want to build on that. And let me publicly in this forum, with those of my colleagues and the rest of the department online, thank the library community of Trinidad and Tobago for their continued investment and support of the Department of Library and Information. It is not taken for granted. Thank you very much. I need a photograph with you too. All right, so on behalf of the Dean, this now brings the award ceremony to a close. And we have another aspect to the event, to the evening. But before that, let me invite Ms. Roxanne Rollox to move the vote of thanks on your behalf. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. This list I have is from Dr. Griffin. All right, it is important to say thanks. Very important to say thanks. So let me begin by saying thank you to the Dean of the Faculty, Dr. Dion Edwards-Kerr, Faculty Administrator, Mrs. Hayes Johnson, Faculty Marketing Officer, Ms. Stevenson, Ms. Angela Wilson, DLIS Senior Administrative Officer or Administrative Assistant, Ms. Chantal Magowan, DLIS Senior Secretary and Department Office Staff, Deputy Deans of the Faculty of Humanities and Education, Ms. Paula Green, Executive Director, NALIS, Ms. Beverly Williams, NALIS, Ms. Avalon Thomas of NALIS, thank you, and Ms. Jenna Sandiford Mundy, President of LAT, and to Dr. Lorraine Nero, Honorary UE Fellow of the DLIS. Now, we want to get, we want to be a little more specific with our thank you, and the reason why we appreciate this collaborative initiative. And for us graduating students, it means a lot to get the support from the organizations, from our lecturers and organizations to promote excellence in library and information services. So to the executive department, the director, as I mentioned before, we want to thank you for use of the Pamella Benson audiovisual room and the old fire station. We want to say thank you to the corporate secretary, the corporate security, department for their assistance with the logistics and providing before and after hours access to the facilities to our service providers. Thank you to the Public Relations and Marketing Department for facilitating the booking of the facilities and assisting us with all protocols or the visual support. We appreciate it. The Facilities Department, they assisted with the setting up of and providing of janitorial services, the Human Resource Management Division for transportation services. We want to thank Rainier Bisnath and Kevin Nazir from ECCA School and Office Supplies Limited for their sponsorship, Natalie and Robert Walters for the beautiful decor, Emmanuel Villafana for videography services, Jason Macano for photography services, Terrell Daniel for assisting with logistics and the setup for the cocktail reception, Damian Thomas, DJ services, Shania Pompey, musical services, Save the Date Limited for the catering services, and Island Potions Limited for the bar services. We appreciate the assistance, and we want to recognize, acknowledge, and value the collaborative effort of everyone for making not only today a success, but sowing seeds into our lives as we go out there into the world, and we revolutionize how they apply information, archives, and library sciences to the world. We appreciate you. Thank you very much.
And folks, thank you very much. This is the end of the formal part. There's a more informal, more Caribbean, more Friday night part. And it's being held at, that's why I invited you. My foreignness is showing now.
All right, so following our formal proceedings, I invite you all to attend a cocktail reception, which will be held at the old fire station for the persons who are not familiar with the building. Once you go up the staircase and you make a left out the glass doors towards Hart Street, the old fire station is all the way to the end of the building. So you'd see, I believe you'll see a lot banner there. But so I welcome you all to, have a few cocktails and, and lime, yeah. Thank you very much.